the COVID meeting. It's a Zoom meeting, so people are all in place at homes. And so I guess we do have to have a vote to let us know that we're all present. So let me read off the names. What we got? We got Maria,
Here.
Patrick,
Here.
Jamie,
Here.
and Leo's present. So the only one missing right now is Charlie Bering. So we did get a, what?
I was just gonna, you want to mention make the announcement about Colleen?
That's what I was just about to do.
Oh, okay, sorry.
We did hear from Colleen last week that for some reason she was moving apartments or moving living arrangements and had to leave town. So as of November 1st, when she left, she could no longer be a member of our commission. So she resigned her post effective November 1st. So unfortunately, we're down a member again.
Leo, I was recently informed that you can be a member of the Conservation Commission out of town. If you start in town, this may apply to many conservation commissions in more rural areas where membership is hard to find.
I'll look into that, but I think our charter has you have to be a citizen, a resident. I mean.
Oh well, maybe that's some reason for changing the charter. Remember, we lost Bonnie Pototsky some years ago because she moved out.
She moved to Connecticut. That's a little.
Yeah, I know.
Long.
But she had temporarily left town. Like Maria too, she thought she had to leave town, and then we thought we would lose her, but we would not have had to lose her. You know that, Maria?
I do. I resigned, but was able to find another residence here.
Right.
And that worked out for all of us.
But
I did want to mention that I spoke with Councilor Piccarelli and indicated to him that we need to get the DPW subcommittee meetings moving so we can reinstitute our memberships. I think Patrick, myself, and Charlie, as well as our new member that's been waiting for a long time, since March, to join us. And so I think Laurel has reached out to her and just told her that, bear with us, it's happening. And Vinny indicated that it would be in the next couple of weeks they would start to have some subcommittee meetings. Problems, of course, are there's only so many Zoom meetings a night, so that's the problem. So without any other issues, I think we can move forward to our first item on the agenda, which is a information update on Arsenal Park, both Phase A and Phase B. And we have Glenn and Nick here to tell us a little story, hopefully.
Great. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you.
I think I know you all, but as Leo said, I'm Glenn Howard with CDM Smith, and online with me is Nick Watkins. He's our lead landscape architect on the Arsenal project. I'm going to provide a brief update on where we are on the Phase A construction, and I'll then move into the Phase B design effort that we just pretty much started. And then finally, Nick will bring up the approved concept plan that was presented. It's been several months since we met with you to review that plan. And, you know, I guess the goal for me, for us at the end of the meeting here would just be confirmation of the primary elements of the concept plan so we can move forward and know that as we move to 60%, if there's anything that's going to change, we'd want to know that, you know, as soon as possible so we don't start going too far off track. For the Phase A construction, we've been providing monthly updates. Hopefully, you've all had a chance to review the progress as it has occurred. We've included photos with the reports, so it's coming along nicely. As of last week, or maybe the week before, the stormwater infiltration system was completely installed. We were waiting for that for quite a while. There was a big hole in the ground for about a month, and that's been connected up to all the other stormwater improvements that are now in, including the general grading that's been done, including the raised knolls in place. The rain gardens have all been shaped and connected to the subsurface infiltration system. Everything's been brought to within about 12 inches of finished grade, in some cases probably 6 inches of finished grade where the topsoil is going to be placed for the lawn areas. The bosk's been graded and topsoil was all installed, and we've got the 21 large 6-inch diameter honey locusts have been planted, so those are in. We wanted to get those in this fall. The rest of the landscaping will go in the spring. We completed all the final coordination with Boylston Properties. There were some issues with the entrance, just fine tuning the grades between their project and our project was a little more difficult than we anticipated, but we've got that all squared away. Came up with a nice alternative, I think, and I think the transitions will be really nice between Arsenal Yards and the park now. The Gateway Arch is currently being fabricated. November is going to be fairly slow. What we're waiting for now, all that precast walls, stairs, and curbing, which I think you remember was an extensive part of the Phase A project. That's all should be arriving end of November or 1st of December. The contractor's pretty confident that he's going to keep working, try to get most of that in as weather permits, and then they anticipate getting that installed before the winter shutdown. That'll leave the Bowmanite concrete walks for next spring, the remaining landscaping, and the structure, the pavilion structure, to be installed in the spring. For the Phase B design effort, so the contract that we're currently under contract to take the Phase B to a 60% complete design. That was kind of a recommendation we made.
Glenn, before we go into
Yep.
Phase B,
Yep.
Can we just say, are there any questions on Phase A?
Yes.
Okay, I had gone down, I did see the excavations for the infiltration gallery. Looks like some great soils beneath it. And things were, I mean, when I walked it, things looked pretty good, so.
Yeah, the whole time we were pretty much doing the work out there, every storm we had, that site, I don't think a whole lot of storm water is going off. You know, there was the big concern about the connection through Boylston, through Arsenal Yards, but I don't think much water is leaving that site. I think it
I wonder if we
infiltrates
should
really
meter
well.
it to find out how little we put into that system.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Someone said there was a question.
No,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, I was just curious about the area that says precast concrete lawn steps. I was just curious if that's like poured with a foundation on the bottom, like where you would normally have some soil infiltration in, or is it just like the sides, the vertical like curbing that create the steps?
Nick, you want to respond to that, the detail?
Yeah, would you like me to just pull it up real quick? I have the drawing right here. Let me just grab that. And then share my screen. Let me know if everyone can see.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in the back part of the house, so my internet might be a little slow here.
I'm relegated to the basement, so we're.
While that's taking time to come up, I'm just curious because I just can't remember right now. The Phase A box on the graphic we were handed with our agenda straddles the community gardens. That's in Phase B, or is the community gardens in Phase A?
Phase B is the community garden will go in under Phase B.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just want to make sure.
Apologize for these drawings taking a second here.
You're getting close.
I think I passed the details. But I'll just start talking about it while we get to the details. So the way that these precast concrete elements work is that you should really think of them as a veneer. So while they do have all of the structural integrity of a normal cast in place element, they you kind of want them to be free floating so that you don't have to be pinning them in when you bring them onto the site. So what we've done is we've designed essentially a concrete stair that sits underneath it as a base, and then you place a 3/4 to 1 inch mortar setting bed, and then these veneered, quote unquote, veneered stairs that sit on top of that. So here we go. Sorry, that took a minute. So what you're going to have is, now let's see if I can zoom in. I'm not sure why my computer is going so slow here. For the various elements throughout the site, and I'll start with the lawn stairs because that's one you asked about, you have a little bit of an overlap between these veneered elements. So when you look at it, it's going to look like you're not going to see any of the sub base to that, but there's a full concrete stair slab that's poured underneath that, and then you have the stone setting bed underneath it. The veneered stairs have almost more of a granite look to them than a poured in place concrete, and then you have the benefit of having an admix color in there as well. So these, if one of these stairs were to crack or to pitch out of place, you could actually replace it to a certain degree, as long as you can get the color matched. But this is going to be much more stable than just having a normal poured in place concrete stair. You have a little bit of wiggle room there for the final install of those more aesthetically driven treads that we're going to be waiting on. And it's the same thing for the precast berm stairs and the seat wall blocks that are going to be going in along the back terraced lawn areas. They all have a sub base underneath them.
Thank you.
Leo, I have a question for Nick too.
Yep.
On the Bosque, the plan is, I think, to install mulch around the plants, the trees that have come in, the honey locust trees, and then stone dust to come in the spring. I was wondering why not the stone dust first and then the mulch. It sounds as if the mulch is going to be in the way of the stone dust when it arrives in the spring.
Right. So we have an interesting situation now where we're kind of dealing with the logistics of getting everything installed. So the trees have been placed in the Bosque with the prepared sub base before the stone dust. So everything will be installed except for that last 4 inches of stone dust. And we've asked them to, mound some mulch, straw, hay bales around the tree root balls to make sure they're protected throughout the winter. But the plan, I believe, is going to be to bring those tree pits up to finished grade, install the 4 to 8 inch landscape edging, whatever we end up going with, and then bringing the stone dust up to that, because we need something to compact up against with that stone dust. They're also going to be placing a stabilizer a mixture on top of that to stop some of the spreading of that stone dust. So it all needs to kind of be set in place right up against all those edges before they can do that.
He was going to berm up the topsoil too around there's a few inches of the root ball exposed. So he's going to mound up the topsoil around that for the winter protection.
Right.
And so then they'll prepare that in the spring, they'll pull that all away and get everything brought up to grade, and then bring in the stone dust as kind of a final. It is mulch going to be around those pits are going to have, it's stone dust is going to go right up to the.
Yes, and then we'll have the planting soil loam right up to finished grade with some mulch, and then there's ground cover plantings proposed for those tree pits as well.
So you'll be able to recycle the mulch after taking it out of the original location.
The
Really should be on top of everything else, shouldn't it?
I think he's
Yes.
going to just mound up the topsoil around those root balls for the winter. I think he's going to bring in the mulch for each tree pit around the same time he's bringing in the stone dust for next spring to clean that all up.
It wasn't stated that way.
I can find that out. I'm not positive, but I think that's what we were talking about at the last meeting. He was just going to, because he's brought all the topsoil in. We went down like 3 feet with the topsoil, and we just have in between the tree pits where there isn't actual. It's the the nice CU soil from Reed is the material that we brought in. So
Thank you.
Anybody else, any questions before we go into phase B?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Glenn, I'm sorry.
no problem. Thank you. So like I said, we're contracted to take it to 60%. That'll allow us. Our goal is to get to 30% in early December and come back to you guys with an update in a meeting in this kind of a format. And then 60% by early January. And that's kind of the point where we would hold the public meeting that the town council requires for all these improvement projects, and then do a presentation to the council after that to update them. What we've done so far already, we've started the investigations, which includes the geotechnical. Just yesterday, we were out, we had DPW out there. If you remember, we were very concerned about all the settlement that's occurring out in the parking area and over by the tot lot. So DPW helped our engineers do some excavation. I think they went down 6 feet if they could. I know, but they ended up hitting a lot of materials. The kind of good news is, you know, we were concerned that maybe there was some kind of a tunnel that they seemed to be in a line. We were concerned there might be a tunnel because we had heard there was tunnels under the site. It's not tunnels. It looks like they just demolished the buildings and left large pieces of building and concrete and just covered it up and not, you know, didn't cover it up in the, they didn't fill in the voids and things. And I think that's what it looks like over the 40 years since it's been installed. You're seeing settlement. And so that's what we found in all areas. There was no big surprise like some underground tank or something that had been collapsing.
That's good.
We've also held an internal design charrette related to the play area, which is one of the biggest features of the Phase B area. Several of our landscape architects visited Lincoln Park in Somerville. It was recommended at one of the previous presentations that the town, you know, some people in town would like that as an example of what they'd like to see at Arsenal. So we had a good meeting, spent a couple hours out there, looked how the kids were using the facility and looked at some of the equipment. And we were very impressed with that site. So we've just had a design charrette. We've got 3 different layouts that we've started and at the 30%, and that's, you know, we'll present those at our next meeting with you guys. So
I think we have just as much area as they do in Lincoln Park.
oh yeah, yep.
And they really use the space very nicely there in that park.
Yep. So we're working with Gideon and Laurel on setting up user group meetings for the community garden and the skate park. We have our skate park company is based out of Arizona, and we've got him under subcontract now, and he's ready to go as soon as we can. I think we're going to end up having to do an initial meeting with a Zoom meeting. I recommended that we maybe meet some of the users out on the site and just give them an idea of how this is going to fit within the you know, where the courts are now, so they get a feel for the space and the size, and then we'll bring him onto a Zoom meeting. The first one would be more of a informational gathering meeting for him to understand, you know, what the users are looking for, and then we do a follow-up where he presents 2 or 3 concepts of what he's thinking about for the skate park itself. So like I said, our next, that's pretty much what we've done for now. We've got the stormwater investigations that will occur probably not next week, but the week after. We're going to get in and do the CCTV of all the remaining stormwater piping and everything that's over in the Phase B area and confirm the outlet, so we don't run into the issues that we had on Phase A where we didn't know exactly where we were going to stake the stormwater. You know, just like with Phase A, we'll plan on an infiltration system. We'd like to take the majority of the parking lot stormwater that's now just going into the system and out to the river. We'd like to take that directly to another one of these big infiltration basins. We'll be doing a full NOI for this phase also. Like I said, schedule 30%, hopefully early November, come back to you, and then 60% in January. So with that, if you don't have any questions, maybe if you do, we could maybe just let Nick remind everybody of what the primary improvements are, and then have questions after that.
Can I have a question,
Oh, yeah.
Glenn? You said the infiltration gallery. Will you put the infiltration gallery under the paved area?
I'd like to do it in the athletic field. That
Okay.
makes it easier to maintain, you know, if there's ever any maintenance or something that needs to occur, that makes it easier, and there's a lot of space out in that outfield.
Okay.
So we're going to do 2 borings out in that kind of off the parking lot in the field, because I don't know exactly where it's going to go yet, but since we've got they're going to be coming out and doing a few borings out there, we're going to get 2 in the 2 areas that I'm looking at possibly putting that. So
Okay.
we'll have a really good idea of what we'll get for infiltration there also.
Any other questions from anybody right now? Or we
Yes.
move on? Oh, Patrick, you have one?
Yes, it's really an old point, but I'm not sure from the scale of the design as presently illustrated, whether there's enough flexibility built into the area sitting on that 4 feet of concrete platform. You may remember that Peter Santola, Parks and Recreation, was concerned about losing athletic facilities that were highly dependent on having that base. The community gardens is something that I would still like to feel could be relocated in a place with proper soil all the way down as far as it goes, and allow for the restoration of maybe another tennis court on that platform in the future. So if there's enough flexibility in your design to accommodate something like another tennis court on that platform, I'd like to see it in the design if possible. And I see some flexibility in that eastern portion of the platform where you have the skate park, which can be of any dimension that's reasonable without, standard dimension. The same would go for the community garden. So the logical thing to me would be to perhaps realign that access path on the southern side of the garden to make either the community gardens location or the skate park location big enough to accommodate a change of use in the future. Just to plan ahead,
Yeah, I can say that the skate park is actually, that space right there for that skate park is a fairly small skate park.
We could enlarge the skate park if we had to. But Patrick, you gotta remember, all the beds in the community gardens are raised beds. They're not on the ground. They're all raised beds. They're, waist high.
Yes,
something.
that's excellent. That's excellent. That means they
So-
can
so
be moved
that
again.
area, that area could be changed into a bigger skate park or something else. We do have plenty of tennis courts in town. We have plenty of basketball courts in town. I think I gave you all a spreadsheet of how many we had. Certainly not a demand, not an overwhelming need for those, but we don't have any other skate parks. So whatever. I think there's down the road, if that ever happens, I think the community gardens was pretty looking forward to this spot. They like this end of
Oh,
town.
yes, that's fine. Yeah, I'd say bring them on, sure. It's just that in the future, seeing that the original design of the area was for, well, in fact, tennis courts, that's what they were.
Yes.
And we don't know what the new demand will be with the new housing in there and courts that are playable.
Well, the other
They were
issue
not.
with regard to that is you have a grass area that more people than 4 people can play on than a tennis court.
I just wanted to remind. Oh, sorry.
Maybe?
A question about the community garden. Do you know what the surface of that is going to be? I know the beds will be raised, but I was wondering if it's just going to be a concrete slab, or is there going to be sort of any like kind of nicer material on top of that, some sort of like crushed stone type thing, or have we not gotten that far?
We have not gotten that far. This is Gideon. I also wanted to acknowledge I let Charlie Merring in, so he's also here, just so you all know. I just wanted to, just obviously, if you want to look at reworking this area, you can, but you spent a significant amount of time and unanimously voted on this general layout and that location for the community garden and that location. So, I mean, this is why we're going over this master plan that you approved and was also submitted to the town council.
Yep.
So I just want to remind you, context-wise, that this was approved by you, and because it's been a while, we wanted to, go
Right.
back over it to make sure that you remembered what it was. We've actually met with the community garden group, Laurel and I, and reached out to the commission members that had volunteered to be part of that group to discuss the new location. And Phase A has a number of pieces that are being put there in preparation for that location. So we've already planned for the location of the community gardens as part of the Phase A as well. I just wanted to remind everybody about that context and the several years of planning that we've put into the park as a whole. There are going to be some, potential changes as we learn about what's going on underneath the ground, but I was not imagining that we would be completely rejiggering everything, but
No,
it's
not.
certainly,
I think Patrick's looking down the road. If something happened 10 years from now, could we change that to something different?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Yes, the skate park is going to, we're not going to go down with that skate park. We're not excavating, because one thing we found in phase A, you've got the slab that we found in a lot of locations. The geotechnical program we did there worked out well, because where we're putting actual structures like the infiltration structure, there was a huge foundation, but it was just out off the edge of where we were putting that. So we got lucky. So because of that, we don't know exactly where the foundations are versus slabs. So we've told our skate park consultant that we want this thing to be, it's going to come up. It's not going to be, we're not going to excavate and go down. And so if it down the road, there was nobody using the skate park, it became something that just was not getting used, you'd be able to take out, demolish and remove the skate park elements, and you could slide a tennis court over there if that's kind of where I think you're going with that.
Yeah, my point is just incorporate flexibility for the future. Just as much as possible, make allowance for that in advance, so you don't have to make huge changes later.
Yeah. And the surface for the community garden, so like I said, there's a slab under the whole thing. You've got that right now, you have the tennis court pavement, and then there's probably 6 inches of gravel under that. So we haven't really figured out exactly what we're doing, but we'll be probably taking off the tennis court pavement and stone, and that could be a crushed stone surfacing put back in there with the raised bed sitting on the crushed stone. I think that's one of the things we'd want to work with the people who are going to use the community garden, find out what they really would like in between the beds for surfacing, and we can pretty much accommodate whatever they want.
And we're looking forward to your input as well, Jamie. We've gone out to the Fresh Pond planter beds there, but I do think it's important to keep in mind we want to try to keep this accessible as well. So whatever the finish is that we do, we'll be looking to you and the commission to finalize that, and the design and size of the beds as well. So we had a nice conversation with them so that they understood where it's going to be, and they're going to give us some guidance, as follow-up as part of this process.
There would be pros and cons to both. If it was asphalt, you could easily mark out where each bed is with paint, less ripped bags, easier mobility, but it would not infiltrate any stormwater, but maybe
it won't either way.
What's that?
It won't either way. It's a concrete slab underneath the asphalt.
Right. Okay. Well, then, and then if you can reuse the tennis, if there's materials that can be reused, that could also be a bonus. But it sounds like you guys have it under control, and we'll look at all the options.
Yeah. I personally, I think it's just aesthetically pleasing, the way it's done at Fresh Pond, because I remember earlier in the process saying that the beds would just be going straight on concrete, and so I didn't know if there was the opportunity to put a different surface on there just for aesthetics purpose, so it's not like a parking lot with beds on it.
Yeah, you have a stone surface over at Fresh Pond, right?
Yeah, it's really nice. I mean, it's accessible because I think it has to be for that project, and then we have a number of accessible beds in there too. So
it looks suspiciously like the DCR stabilized surface that we just installed at 330 Pleasant Street, and I assume pretty similar to what is being installed under the Bosque.
That would be fine. That would be nicer. I think, Glenn, did you look? They also had raised beds over in the Lincoln Park as well, and I think they didn't use concrete there either. They had a different kind of material in that area as well. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I did not go over to the community garden there.
Oh, okay.
I went over to the gardens, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I took some pictures, so I can, and I also live in Somerville, so I can investigate that.
I think they were not concrete. They were more of a stone like they have at Fresh Pond, I think.
I think the unusual thing that we have is that we have a concrete slab there already.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're trying to create an accessible area. We just want it to be aesthetically pleasing.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's just
So-
more, it's prettier than looking at a concrete slab because a concrete slab 6 inches below it. Or,
Yeah, they actually use the pavement for the tennis courts to drain the area because, you know, it's crowned in the center
Yeah.
through that area. So that's how they're getting the water to move
Yeah.
towards both sides.
And I was also, maybe this is more of a question for Gideon and Laurel, but like the town's going to pay to install all those beds, right? Like the beds will all be installed as part of this project. Is that a correct
that's,
assumption?
well, I think they'd be nicer if they all were the same, but
That's, so we've, obviously the commission would be making a recommendation to the council, and then it's the council who approves the project and the funds. So it would be logical from a construction management perspective and from a continuity and from a, just like getting them in there in logical order, et cetera, for all kinds of reasons to have it be included in the plan. And, we'll go from there, I would assume. Right, Glenn?
I think they'll
Yeah.
look nicer
Yeah,
myself.
we had intended to have all those beds installed during construction.
Great.
Great.
Okay, sorry, Nick. Or is it Glenn? Who's doing it? Glenn, I'm sorry.
Nick is I think we had moved to Nick just to
Okay,
go through
sorry.
the.
Great. Okay, so I'll pick up where we just left off here. So the Phase A construction that Glenn just went over is kind of everything to the east of this line. We have about a 4-foot berm, which is also going to be kind of on hold right now because it might be a great spot for wildflower plantings for the community garden. And then, immediately off of that berm, we have the community garden area that we were just discussing. Directly adjacent to that is the skate park, followed by the rest of the active recreation, which is going to be the 3 tennis courts with the 6 pickleball court option, the 2 basketball courts, and this whole area is going to be lit with a new lighting system. So I believe right now we're looking at 20-foot candles, and there's a question about whether or not the skate park should be lit.
Yeah, Nick, I did reach out to Musco actually yesterday, and I asked them to give us 2 lighting layouts, one that included the skate park and one that did not include the skate park, but that would provide a little bit of overflow lighting from the court area onto the skate park. So we'll have 2 layouts from them that we'll be able to, when we do our preliminary, cost estimate, we'll be able to kind of have a couple of options. So we'll have the design, and then whichever way the commission wants to go with that as far as lighting that court area, we can do either one. So that might be something to think about.
Kind of dark sky considerations with those
They will
lighting
all
and
be, yep.
Keeping it away from the riverfront area? And
Yeah, I don't know, were you involved in all of the meetings related to Victory Field and Filipello? Because the new Musco LED systems the light levels drop off. If you get a chance to go out to the Arlington Street Field, which they just installed, you really get a good feel for, as soon as you walk away from the actual limits of what they're trying to light, the lighting levels just drop right off. It's pretty amazing now.
So the answer is they're all dark sky compliant.
Yep. In fact, every project that we do now with Watertown, the council has asked us to get the certification that it meets the dark skies, the IDA.
It's actually in our zoning ordinance as well, so it's consistent with.
And the lighting is appropriate for the level of sports. This is just recreational sports at these areas, so it's not high school. So it'd be the appropriate foot candles for whatever. Safety, I think, more than anything else. Correct?
Correct, and it'll have, it'll be able to be controlled by the recreation department remotely, and it'll also have either motion detecting type light or the ability for them to hit something on the poles that lights it just while they're there, and then it'll time off when no one's on the court. So there's a lot of flexibility with the
And we have to
systems.
figure out what time to shut them off at night too. So that's something else we can discuss down the road, but that's something to think about when we want to shut these lights off.
Okay, Nick.
That's down the road.
Okay, yeah.
Before you leave the skate park, something you said earlier is interesting. You've told the skate park design sub to go up with the design instead of going down for, you know, the type of design that skate parks need. And I understand why, but I'm just wondering for noise levels next to the gardens, is it possible to explore how much you could physically go below grade without, you know, too much too much concern? Like if you're doing test pits in another area, can you do a test pit there?
We are
Sort of-
doing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just if you could do a test pit there to just really be sure about that.
Yeah, we are going to do one boring in the skate park area, but like I said, the problem is what we found on phase A, there's no really good historical information about where the foundations are. So
And describe, so the foundations are actually, these had gantries in them, this building. And so the foundations are actually, there's tracks inside underneath that are still in place. And there's substantial foundations for parts of that, the physical pieces. So when you hit them, you know, it can have 4 feet of concrete.
yeah, there's one we hit at phase A there on the far side.
I believe this one was unexpected, right, Glenn?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can see how deep it is. So this is a major concern.
Yeah, so, you know, when we said he won't go down, that means they'll be building up something on the edges. So they'll, you know, to build the forms for the skate park elements, you'll have some areas that are raised up. But either way, you know, even like I did a bowl out at Hyde Park back in the early 2000s, and you know, it went down about 6 to 8 feet, and that, you know, there was some sound attenuation with that, but you really have to go down pretty deep in order to kind of inhibit the sound that's coming from the use there.
One thing that we could explore, we have this planted strip here in between the areas, and I know that planted strips don't necessarily help too much with sound, but there's a possibility it could be slightly raised and there could be some trees, so at least there's that visual separation, which sometimes mentally, you know, helps you kind of concentrate more on the community garden than what's happening directly adjacent to you. So we could look at extending that.
Yeah, let's keep that in mind though about the sound
Mm-hmm.
when we're working with this with our consultant.
Definitely.
Yeah, it just sort of concerns me. I can just visualize something that I find right now is a little startling to me, that the skate park could be way up here and looking down upon all the gardeners, and they may not, it may just be incongruous. You know, but who knows? I don't know, I might be overthinking it.
Well, we had discussed this before, and this is certainly an urban garden space. It's not the garden space that's in the middle of, you know, the natural area of the park, and it never was in this site, but it has good sun coverage and it has, you know, some qualities, and the majority of the gardeners understand. I mean, it's also directly adjacent to the Arsenal Yards building and the noise that it creates. And
That was something I was going to bring up later,
Yeah.
Gideon. The noise levels of those air handling units are certainly in violation, so they need to be fixed.
no, we have a conversation with them, and they have identified things to fix it, but they haven't submitted it.
It's
They
quite a
wanted to
while.
adjust it
It's
first.
May.
So.
So that's an aside.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nick.
Thank you for considering, you know, what you can do there. And maybe, you know, more than one boring might be helpful, or a test pit, because one boring is maybe, I don't know. Anyway, thank you for considering it.
Yeah, our consultant will put together, he'll be able to do kind of a 3D image of what the park is what the skate park will look like, and we can get him to include kind of the periphery too. So what it's going to look like next to it. And so you get like a bird.
I also wanted to mention that I noticed Jesse Hammond and Christopher, oh, maybe he's not on it anymore. No. They're the ones that had identified, you know, particular interest in being part of the, you know, the stakeholder group for the skate park. So I'm happy to see that they saw that this meeting was occurring and that they're on, and that we'll be reaching out to them and others in the community.
Great.
Thank you, Nick. On you go.
Okay. So to kind of round off the area of where we believe that the existing slab to be, south of the basketball courts, we have an existing rectangular pavilion, timber frame, and we also have the existing restroom facility. We have our architectural team taking a look at the restroom facility to see how that can be rehabbed, I believe, for accessibility concerns, as well as just a general look at the structure. And then also looking at the existing pavilion to place a new pavilion on the site, directly adjacent but across from this pathway here, that's going to approximate the look and dimensions of the existing pavilion. We have a secondary pathway that runs along the southern portion of the site, past what is an existing fitness area that is going to be replaced in its current location, and then kind of runs over to the recreational open space and the softball, baseball field on the western portion of the site. On the northern side, we're going to continue the wider promenade pathway. So this will be the main pathway to move from east to west across the site. We're planning on using those IDA-approved bollard lights that are being installed on Arsenal A. Those will be continued along the length of this promenade. And I know that one of the requests is to strengthen the connection from the far east of the site to the far west of the site, where the playground area is. So we'll also be looking into, continuing at least the bollard lighting and some of the look and feel of this promenade to get you over at least to the end of the parking area. The existing entrance.
One thing,
Sure.
the cross-country team uses this park to have their meets. Is that still the thought of that track there? And we're taking
Yes.
that into account when we design this thing?
Yes, and that's the southernmost pathway that runs along the fitness area. There'll also be this kind of, central pathway that runs along the edges of the courts for access. But this is the continuation of that cross-country pathway.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And that corridor that goes through the center of the park the lighting of that was intended to get you all the way to the Talcott Avenue corridor where there's existing lighting for, as a multi-use corridor, like bikes, pedestrians, walkers, joggers, etc., from the original master plan.
That's the promenade, right?
Yeah, so it's the trail that would continue on past the promenade all the way to the Talcott Gateway. And that's what the commission had determined would be the only lighting at the time. You were not interested in having lighting going down the shared pathway down to the gates to the south.
Okay.
Is that part of the conversation, or?
I wouldn't change anything we already agreed on. I don't think we had lights down there. We talked about lighting that's closer to the river. I thought we talked about not lighting that.
Yeah, the southern route that goes down to the gate was intended to not have lighting, and there's back and forth. There's discussion, and ultimately people acknowledge that if a bicycler is riding through there at night, they would have their own headlights, etc., because the Little Greeno is already dark.
Yep.
I did have one question on that. We know bicycles are going to be using that north-south connection. As part of the Cape Cod Bikeway and Old Townhouse Road Park down in Yarmouth years ago, we put a grass and we put trees through the middle, and we kind of had a pedestrian walk, and we had kind of a green strip, and then we did have a second kind of pathway, and one was more just to keep the bicyclists and the pedestrians from conflicts. It turned out to be a nice detail, and then now the trees are grown and it's great. So it takes take a little more width, but I don't know if there's any interest in us investigating that on this pathway.
I like that idea.
I think it would,
As an option. That's an option.
Would it take away land from the baseball field, or I mean, I guess if there's enough room that it doesn't impact the fields, because that seems to be a great need, is all these fields.
Yeah, we'll have to look, but I don't, we'd be adding probably about 4 or 5 feet. So plus a green strip. I think
I
we'd
think
come.
there's
Might be a
space
lot.
for it.
I think there
I
is
don't know
too.
how much, we should discuss that. I'm not sure how much demand there'll be where there's going to be a lot of conflicts in this section. So we wouldn't want to, have a super wide corridor, but you definitely want it to be wide enough also for the, maintenance vehicles to be able to drive along it.
So what's that, 6 feet or 8 feet?
Well, a multi-use path, the minimum is 8 that you can have, and a preference is 12. And so sometimes we compromise, like the upper Charles River pathway is 10 and it's too narrow. But the part along Reno is 12 and it's wide enough to accommodate a multi-use.
I think, I don't know.
Runners and walkers are to the right, bikers go off to the right, but it's not striped.
But this is a park. This isn't a bikeway. This is a park. So
Right.
I'd prefer if the bicycles in the way, they have to stop. I know it's inconvenient for them, but it's a park. It's not a. I know they'll be using it, but it's a park. It's not
It's a
a.
multi-use path.
It's a pathway.
Yeah, I agree with Leo. I think that, just make it wide enough that it can safely accommodate, a bicycle and a person or two, a person and a child, so that's wide enough and safe enough. Also, I sort of remember somebody mentioning, and it's been a while now, but with maybe low lighting that was on the ground to help with the bicycle. But whatever was decided, let's not rehash it unless we need to make a decision. But I do remember something about really low lighting close to the ground.
Well, all these are bollard lights. They're all, Nick helped me, about 3 foot tall with lights aiming downward.
Correct. Yep.
So you got to find.
Oh, okay.
This is not the,
That's not the fixture
exact
we ended up
bollard,
with.
but that's
Yeah.
the scale of it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yep,
But we
that's
would
what.
not be putting those on the north-south pathway, just the
Just
main
on the
promenade.
east-west one. Yeah, right.
Oh, okay. Okay. I think you can move on.
Okay. So I'll start now at the vehicular entrance to the site at the north here, where we're looking at mimicking the gateway structure that was placed at the entrance to Arsenal Yards River Green. This structure would have to be slightly enlarged to make sure that we're meeting all the regulations for mostly fire truck access into the site. But that would also, it serves as the main entrance to the site. So having an attractive gateway feature there is something that we're proposing.
But we're not going to match the other one exactly. We're
Right,
maybe thinking of maybe like an arch, a curved structure, something. We haven't come up with that design yet.
A realignment of the existing roundabout. So we'll be closing off the southern portion that's existing at this roundabout into the site, and just having a two-way access drive. So slightly realigning the roadway as you enter the parking lot. This area is really going to be a focal point of the site. This node is going to see most of the traffic moving in all directions throughout the site. So doing something attractive at this location that reduces conflict for people moving in all directions is going to be a priority. We have some great existing remnants on the site. One of the medallions from one of the historic medallions from one of the brick structures, as well as the existing Arsenal Park sign. So we'll be looking at how to integrate those into the design. I know that there was a proposal for some kind of like a trellis around this area, and I believe the discussion now is about going with something a little bit more at ground level, maybe some seat walls, and then using trees as your vertical element. As we were just discussing, the multi-use path would just lead you all the way down to Greeno Boulevard, a lot of the DCR facilities that are down in this location. There's an existing gatehouse that's on the historic register So looking at a way to kind of refurbish this entrance where there's a wrought iron fence is another element that we're looking to include. Possibly just a couple brick columns, just to serve, so this area will serve as another visible entrance to the Arsenal Park
There's
facility.
a second entrance down there too that goes directly perpendicular to the river. When we were down there talking, when we had our
Right.
most recent meeting about adding a couple more of those piers too.
It's
So there's
there already, yeah.
two kind of entrance locations that we want to improve.
And remove remove the barbed wire.
Right. Yep, the fencing improvements will be included in that for this corner area. The former amphitheater location, it's a great spot for an adventure play area. It has some great elevation change, so we'll be looking at developing a kind of smaller play area that is going to be away from the existing open, highly programmed play area, and we'll focus more on the fact that this is a heavily forested area, and it'll be a lot more impromptu natural material play. Right now, the proposal is for some ground elements and possibly a slide to take advantage of the topography. But this is something that, again, as Glenn said, we're doing design charrettes for the playground in this area. So we're hoping we can be a little bit flexible and come up with a great idea for this location as well. I should also say that in this area, we have a good amount of existing erosion. During our site visit, we noticed it. We're keeping track of where it's coming from, and we're going to come up with a plan for how to fill in the existing scoured areas and possibly secure this area against further erosion. That's going to play in a little bit to the main field area here, where we're looking at doing a little bit of grading to improve the main baseball, softball field area. And along with that, there's going to be some opportunities to take some of the green infrastructure installations that we implemented on phase A and apply those along the edges of this location where we're seeing some of that stormwater that's causing the scouring on the southern portion of the site. Installing some of those along these areas to try to capture that stormwater before it concentrates along that southern edge. Loop paths will be improved around the open field area, and that brings us up to the northeast corner of the site where we have an existing hexagonal pavilion and an existing spray park or spray head feature where we're looking at just some splash pad enhancements and possibly a fixture head improvement, and then the playground area itself, multiple age area playground. And we're looking at bringing it into and incorporating it into this open lawn area a little bit better, and creating a really dynamic space that maintains the circulation throughout the site and also provides a lot of great nodes throughout the play area for different ages to come and enjoy the site in a way that doesn't really conflict with the existing picnic grilling area, which is also located. So there's a lot of programmed activity in this area, and I know I was hearing in the last visit that these picnic tables, they book out pretty frequently, and they're a pretty popular element.
Although I will say that a couple of the concepts that you guys came up with that I've seen, did a really good job of redesigning that area, making the splash pad area seem more part of the overall play area. And I know a couple of the concepts had moved those out of the way because they did kind of create a separation. And I liked a couple of the concepts that really unified that whole area that included the spray park. And then,
You
had
could always put those tables somewhere else.
Yeah, that's some of the concepts they've come up with. They've moved those, and it really allowed for a nice transition between the different components. So.
One last element before I forget, I know there was some discussion about possibly getting a measured loop running path on the site. I think that'd be a great element. You have a nice circuitous path here throughout the entire site. So if there's a way that we can get a measured quarter mile that we could put up some signage for it, that'd be another good way to get some recreation on the site. A way to get, sorry, go ahead.
Gideon, that loop may be actually, if it's anything like Filipello, it may actually be that.
Okay. Yeah, well, John Wacker did both, so I wouldn't be
Yep.
surprised if he did that at Filipello. Yep. Okay. And that brings us back to the parking lot where we're going to be looking
There's
at.
the composting restroom building.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about the rest. So, yep, we have the on the existing pad looking at putting in a new restroom facility with a composting toilet, which will serve as the second restroom facility on the site.
Nick, I only have one question, and that it's going back to the gate down the bottom of the hill.
Hmm.
Is that an historic gate? Do we have any issues with the historical if we do anything with that gate? Is that gate part of Arsenal Park or is part of the road along Talcott? You know,
We'll look into that and verify, but it's
okay.
It's actually rusted through and fallen over.
I know that, but I know it's in bad shape, but I'm just somewhat apprehensive about touching something that somebody might get mad at us for, you know?
Well, we'll confirm. Steve and I will confirm if we have to, get any permission to change or modify that area.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on our board?
I just want to one comment about the parking in the loop there, because you're narrowing it down. Like you said, that there was this focal point. Yeah, just to keep cognizant of emergency vehicles, that the radiuses are sufficient for ambulances and fire if needed, or if Talcott's the way that they would come in.
And buses.
What?
And buses.
Yes.
Buses?
Yeah.
The buses.
Okay. School for the high school track, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do actually think this is going to be a big improvement to the existing traffic pattern. It's having driven through here a couple of times, it's very confusing. You really just want to scoot through this
right
location.
I think you want to make that notch at the end, you make it even come out further so that people are forced to take a right to go around the loop.
Right.
We did that at Filipello under the revision. When we redid Filipello, we actually put a one-way sign up.
Yeah.
If you've been out there, and we put arrow on the pavement.
So I know we have some other guests here. Do they have any comments, questions? I guess not. Okay. So the status is we're going to see something in December?
We may be, when's your, do you have a November meeting?
We do have a November meeting.
This is it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, December.
First week of December, Glenn, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're working hard.
It's all COVID.
Yep, we'll be coming to you for sure with the ideas for the big play area, for sure, and then anything else we've advanced. So we'll definitely be coming back and do something similar at your next meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right. So the next item on our agenda is the minutes, and unfortunately, Laurel, I know that Susan has some issues and hasn't been in much in the last month. So
so we should continue that. Yeah. We should just continue that to next month.
I'd like to be able to continue those minutes until next month.
Yep, fine.
So the next item is you'd all asked about to discuss the 650 supplemental information that the applicant submitted, and as per our order conditions. So if we want to discuss that, I think you all got it. I don't know if anybody had any comments on it. So it's just a discussion because we already, they're pretty much, they planted the plants already today. I mean, I saw their plants in. So anybody have any comments?
Yes.
Okay. Maria.
So I wanted I have a couple comments or a couple of requests to Laurel, really. One is to make sure the order of conditions does get recorded for this project with the O&M plan? Like, so that they, is that already recorded since they already started?
I can double check.
Yeah, if you would just look into it. Then there's something that as I walk through that area that I wish we had asked for, but I'm wondering if Laurel or even Gideon could look into it. Did Gideon leave?
Yeah, but I can talk to him tomorrow.
Okay.
Depending on.
Well, so the side of that Aranta Bio that abuts the asphalt sidewalk that's closest to the Stop and Shop entrance drive is in not horrible shape, but not great shape, and especially with the construction going on. I almost wish we had asked for them to replace that and upgrade it. Is that something that the planning department?
Stop and Shop property.
Yeah.
it-
So that's been in discussion, more sort of generally with the planning department, with Gideon and zoning and such. They are actively working with Stop and Shop to come up with something. But the way it would happen is it would potentially be expanded widthwise onto the Stop and Shop parking lot, or like onto their parcel a little bit. So from Aranta's perspective, that can sort of be, continued to be tackled in the near future, because it wouldn't impact, sort of their border, you know what I'm saying? It would sort of grow widthwise onto the Stop and Shop property. So, but that's
great.
a great point. And that's definitely something that Gideon and others have been pushing them on, because it is, there's definitely room for improvement in terms of a welcoming pedestrian connection to the river.
Oh, okay, wonderful. I'm glad to hear that, because it's also very narrow, so it would be wonderful wider. Oh, okay, great. Well, I'm glad to hear that you guys are already on top of that. And then the other thing that is sort of it's not that important to ask is I wrote a note about on page 3 of the OOC supplemental information memo from VHB under the total phosphorus reduction section, about halfway through the middle paragraph, it talks about the outfall energy dissipation bowl, which we talked about in our meeting. And I'm just wondering who owns that, because, it may silt in over time or need maintenance. And it was not really clear to me whether that outfall was town responsibility in that bowl or theirs. I mean, I know you probably, not urgent, but I'd just be curious who
I think you're right, Marie. I was never sure where the boundary of that property actually was. I thought it was the back of their parking lot, and that was actually, the bowl was ours, but you may be right. So maybe you
it might even be DCR's. I have no idea, but
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
I'll look into it and get back to you.
okay. And the other reason I wanted to talk about it was the excellent point that Jamie brought up, just that if there's some learning thing that we could, like a learning point that we should take away from this project, that this didn't necessarily meet cleanly the redevelopment standards. And therefore, when we were applying under riverfront area, the performance standards for 10.58 section 4, it got a little sticky wicky, I felt like, because we could have really made them do an alternative analysis and other things. And I just think if there's anything that we should discuss about, like, things we could have done better, or in general, to be aware of, like, noticing aerials like Jamie did. But this whole project was a little bit weird from the get-go, since it was already going on. But those were my thoughts on it. And Jamie, I don't know if that was a great catch, but I just felt like it was hard to address in our hearing. I feel like it could.
I think we were trying. It's kind of hard because we get, they file early, but we don't get the packages until later. So there's like only so much time, especially when, we have other stuff going on too. But maybe what we could have done, instead of just like I could have written up what I figured out and just sent it to Laurel, who could have sent those thoughts to everybody so that we could have all then like seen it before. Because I could only contact so many people without violating the open meeting laws.
But you could have sent it to Laurel and she could have.
Right.
So that's in
Yeah.
the future, that's what you can do.
Right.
If you see something that you had that think benefit our review, you can forward it to Laurel and Laurel can send it out to everybody as long as you
Right.
don't comment on it.
Right.
You can, you just can't
Yeah.
comment among the group about it, but you
Right.
can certainly share with it, with everybody.
So I think we were
Move
still
along.
figuring out our thoughts on it, or at least I was until like the 11th hour, because I was trying to like figure out where it goes. But I think that's something in the future that if it's a complicated point that you're trying to make, could send out like something to Laurel so that everybody could read it ahead of time and maybe have a better understand what whichever member's trying to make the point, what they're trying to say.
I would also suggest, this is just off the
It
cuff.
can be only information though. It can't be your thoughts. It only can be informational. It can't give your opinion.
Really? Oh, then I couldn't do that.
I think it can only be informational,
Correct. But I'm thinking what we could have done better is, and Laurel's still new. Have you been at your 1-year anniversary yet, Laurel?
Just barely,
So,
yeah. But
But you're still and you're not even from this state. So, the Wetlands Protection Act it's cumbersome. I'm still learning things and I've been on this board for a long time. So I think over time, if we can maybe rely more heavily on you being the clearinghouse to make sure that we know what performance standards, because we do try to catch certain things, but I think that it would be better if the staff person, was able to say, okay, this is clearly you're in the riverfront. This was complicated. This was a very weird anomaly, but I just wanted to talk it through. If there's something better that we can help with, or that can be done better at the staff level, or whatever it might be.
Well, the other thing was it was also a surprise there was a landfill under it. And I was aware of the fact that it was a landfill back there somewhere, but I didn't know where it was. So that didn't help. That was kind of a surprise. Everything seemed to be a surprise. The project, the first submittal was just god awful, to be kind. And so it was clearly done by the applicant who didn't know the wetlands regulations at all and just thought he could do it. And so the second one was obviously prepared by VHB, and it was just like head and shoulders above the package. So I think if we had,
but even them they didn't bother to check the date. They just saw 1962 on the building and assumed.
Yeah, that's
right. They knew right away what we were talking about. They were like, oh, it should be under the general performance standard and not the redevelopment standard. But I think the other thing that's related too is we put a lot of thought into this, and we actually, I think, got it right in terms of how we interpreted the regulations. But it's not. I think we really need to start adding finding of facts into our special conditions.
I meant to do a draft, and I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, because otherwise that gets lost. And if somebody ever did appeal our decision, they wouldn't have any of that in there. And at the MACC meeting, I don't know if anyone else took this one, but I did the orders of conditions training, and that even just hammered it in all the more. Like, you have to cite every document that went in the record, and you should give your rationale, and you should identify what the resource areas were. And then for Riverfront, the instructor even recommended documenting this is the amount of square footage that we've decided has been developed, so that you can in the future go back and figure out that 10% bank, which is a caveat. I think people interpret that differently, but if you're interpreting it that you can only develop up to 10% of that riverfront area on that parcel period forever, then keeping that documented what that bank is important for the future, so somebody else can't come in and just be like, well, get a whole new 10% or whatnot. So there's just a lot of really good recommendations, and I think mostly to make sure your decisions are upheld in appeals, you need to have that all documented, but also just to help ourselves. And another project, like when we decided that riverfront area, or that there's no riverfront area over on Max's property, like we put a lot of thought into that. And even if there's never a legal challenge to that, the future commission might like to know why we made that decision. And the stuff that, sometimes can't be properly captured in the minutes, that having that decision or that finding of facts and rationale for decision, I think would be very beneficial for us.
I can share what Newton does too. That's an excellent point, Jamie.
Yeah, I was going to do one. I got to look at examples and put like a format together, and I haven't done that yet. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And I can contact the instructor and see if she can share she said that in her town they even have a template that they use so you can remember what to put in there.
Yep.
That's a great idea. See, it was worthwhile to talk about this.
Yeah. But also, I guess the question is who can do that. So I think usually it's the agent that does that, but I know, if that wasn't in Laurel's job description, it is, it's not an insignificant amount of time.
Laurel's our agent, so it's in her job description.
Okay. So I guess Laurel, new exciting task.
Well, no, I mean, I think I
fine.
certainly can help her, but I meant to look into that. So if we can get a format that's just follows description, what our intent was, what we looked at for regulations, and how we approached them. I think that's what you're looking for. So in the findings. So yeah, I meant to do that, and if you could get me that format, that'd be great.
Yeah, if anyone has templates or examples, Leo and I can work together, and I'd be happy to, do that moving forward.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
There's even an example in the training where a commission denied a permit because the applicant failed to submit important documentation, but they didn't document in the findings of fact what the missing information was. So it got overturned when, so I think it would be a good habit for us to start doing.
Yeah, I agree. I remember that in the MACC environmental law seminar I did, that they mentioned that one example you just.
Luckily, we haven't been, nobody's gone above our head to the DEP in the last 23 years that I know of.
Oh, yes, we have. Max went.
That was before we were on.
Before I was on, yes, but not in the last 23 years.
That was before me. That was before me.
It was even before you?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I know it was before me, but I thought
yeah, it was before me that they did that. That was early on.
Diane Proctor.
Huh?
It was Diane Proctor, wasn't it, when she was chairman?
I'm not sure who was. I didn't even know what year it was, but I think that's how they got the development made. Where Lily's Bakery used to be. I think that's how they got that building in. DEP overruled the Concom at that point. So that was prior to Leo. I mean, that was over 23 years ago. I came on just after. I don't remember this building at all. 650 Pleasant in 1997. They built that parking lot. I must have come on in the fall because I don't remember that case at all.
Well, it's a long time ago.
It was.
I don't think. Maybe I would have. All right. So the next item is thank you for everybody. I mean, that was an interesting discussion on that. Just the whole process on that job was interesting for the different issues that Jamie found and the stormwater. It got me going back into looking at a lot of different things again. We had
I guess a final question on that. So I don't know if that site, I mean, I guess you could say that parking lot was providing a purpose or one of the criteria of the act by stormwater retention, but it really wasn't protecting many of the interests for flood control. But I don't know that was maybe could even argue it wasn't protecting any of the interests of the act, in which case they probably could have made that argument and said it doesn't have to meet the performance standards for the riverfront. But what I was curious about was that I think it would still have to meet the stormwater standards, because it seemed to me that those are two different things, that you could still have to meet the stormwater standards even if it doesn't protect any of the interests of the act, so you might not have to meet the resources performance standard. But I wasn't like totally sure about that, so I didn't want to bring that up if they weren't pushing that. But I am curious to know what other people, how others interpret that.
Well, they did meet they did meet the stormwater standards for us, because they put in the storm scepter.
Well, they sort of met the standards. They met them to the maximum extent practicable,
Correct.
which is a
Well, but
subjective.
that's probably any redevelopment, and this was a redevelopment of an existing site. So they did the best they could. They got it to 95 and 92% on the different chains, different stormwater trains.
Well, that might have been PSS. I don't think that was for phosphorus.
Oh no, phosphorus was lower. But
Phosphorus was lower.
that tree box still did quite a bit to reduce it, the phosphorus. And
59.
the other advantage we have is I don't know if you ever walked that area. That big stone area is dry as a bone, and so I don't know if the water that drains in there actually flows overland to the river or just goes into the groundwater. So the phosphorus, by the time it gets to the river, is pretty dissipated. So they use that 50-foot length as in the dissipation of the phosphorus. So,
Right. But I guess what my question is, because I could foresee another situation where we have a parking lot that was built after 1996, like this one was.
we may have
And
one.
if somebody argued that it's not protecting any of the interests of the act, so therefore it doesn't have to meet the performance standards for the riverfront area, would they still have to meet the stormwater standards, because that's, you know, separate? It says you have to write an order of conditions, or are they tied? Like if you don't have to meet the riverfront area, if the area isn't protecting any of the interests of the act, so you don't have to meet those performance standards, then do you also not have to meet the stormwater standards?
Oh.
So Jamie, my thing with that, and this is why I was, I didn't want to harp too much on that project. They really didn't redevelop or like that back parking lot. A lot of the work was really internal to the building, and then on the side of the building closest to Stop and Shop. And so, and so that was always like, okay, how hard to be on them, because the only things they were digging in that area were to remove a little bit of pavement. So that was clearly a benefit. So, I mean, it's a good question. I would say maybe, unless Laurel has an answer, maybe we ask MACC that. But my other thing that I was curious about with that project is, maybe that did qualify for total redevelopment, the whole thing, because the vast majority of it did already exist prior to 1996 or 7, whatever the year is. So like, how do you interpret when a very small sliver of the land did have an expansion of parking, when all of it, you know what I mean? Like, how do you interpret that when most of it was the way it was for a long time?
I'm not sure I get the question.
Oh, you got that?
What'd you say, Leo?
I asked if Charlie had any idea on that. He's not a lawyer. I thought he might.
You're on
Charlie,
mute.
you're muted.
Charlie, you have to unmute.
I think it's very hard to answer a hypothetical question, because facts change just a little bit can change the answer. And so I kind of wouldn't, I don't know. I guess, you could go either way on that. That's what I think. And you really have to depends on particular facts that we may not really have here. I mean, if you wanted to treat the whole thing as a redevelopment, that could upset a lot of stuff, I think. And I don't think we really need to go there. The other thing I think, though, is, Jamie, my thought as I listened to you was that the stormwater standards really are separate If they're discharging stormwater, even if nothing else is affected. But so my guess is it would be that they're still applicable, even if none of the other interests are.
And then the other thing is, like, just to be clear, like the definition of redevelopment for the purposes of the riverfront area performance standards is different than defining redevelopment for application of the stormwater standards. So it's like this other level of confusion.
I agree with what Charlie said. I'm remembering now, like, I don't remember in the performance standard, but definitely if it's redevelopment, you have to go through the stormwater standards. And I'm almost positive even if you do 1058-4, you would still, I would think, have to go through all the stormwater standards. The difference is that if it qualifies for redevelopment, it's only to the maximum extent practicable.
Maria, the definition of redevelopment for the stormwater standards is different than for the riverfront area performance standards. So for that, it's just, was it, it talks about like the lack of topsoil and like, was it degraded, or, well, not like whatever the definition is in 10.5, like the date, when it was degraded and developed, that's just determining whether you're following the performance standards in 10.584 or 5. But it's but like for the stormwater standards, it doesn't matter when that occurred. Like it doesn't matter if it was developed before 1996 or not. It's just like figuring out whether it's new development or redevelopment or no change, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So you could have something that's not redevelopment under the riverfront performance standards, but is redevelopment under the stormwater standards, or vice versa.
I'm slightly confused, but I'll look at the regs.
Yeah.
Wow. Those regs are not, they aren't exactly the clearest to me. I mean, I know that Jamie and I went back and forth a number of times during the day to look at what was applicable and what was not. And it was just mind-boggling how confusing they both are,
Yeah.
But
I think the riverfront ones in particular are very confusing.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think we got what we wanted as an end product, but the question is, why is it so confusing? It's like,
yeah.
And it's only going to get worse because there's other developments down the road that are going to be similar to this. So, in riverfronts. So, I mean, we saw that the Mount Auburn Club is going to come in front of us. I think they gave us a presentation last month, and it's a similar type project in the riverfront. So, again, there's those things we still have to look at them. It's a river, it's a stream, but it's still 200 feet.
I think we should all just spend a little time and refresh our memory, because unfortunately we don't get a lot of, or fortunately or unfortunately, we don't get a lot of projects in front of us.
Yeah,
so we get rusty because
we don't.
A lot of them. What's that?
You're right. You're absolutely correct. But we'll have a couple coming up that are impacted by the riverfront. Maybe 3. I don't know.
Yeah. So, brush up because we've got a bunch of things coming our way.
Okay, sounds good. So let's remember that and just brush up, because it's not that complicated. It's honestly that we just get very rusty. Right. It could be years before. It was probably, I would say, we maybe never came across something like this.
No.
So you get rusty, and if you have lots of different projects in front of you every month, then you were able to just spit it out. So that's all. I think good job.
I think they're also complicated though. We don't have to feel too bad about it. They're like crazy.
The MACC resources are probably really helpful because you're going to be talking to a lot of other people who have seen these things.
Yep. All right, let's move on to Laurel's report, and we can go from there.
Yes. First thing would be a CPA update from Maria, if you have anything.
We're plugging along with the CPA plan and application manual. Keep it short and sweet.
Okay, good. Sorry. So the town's proposal for climate plan funding, as some of you may know, was approved. So the budget amendment passed through town council for the equivalent amount of what we had requested from the state through the MVP grant application, which, as you remember, we did not receive. But it's great that the town has, you know, put the money forward, and some staff will be meeting within the next week to talk about how to launch the RFP process. So I'm excited about that.
Or did you say we didn't receive the action grant?
Yeah, I didn't know that. Oh, you
Oh,
didn't.
I thought I told you guys that at the last meeting.
So did we get it for the get any action grant? Like, what happened? I thought those were kind of like, you just got it if you did, you know, put together.
No. So I'm pretty sure I went over this at our last meeting, but there were 146 applications, totaling tens of dozens of millions of dollars in requests, and they had $10 million to give out. So of the 146 proposals, only 45 were funded.
Wow. Is that very different than other rounds?
It's becoming more and more popular as more and more towns become MVP certified. So it was extremely competitive. We were within a point of the cutoff, but there were 9 between us and the cutoff. So that's how like competitive and tight it was. Yeah. So despite that, the town council passed a budget amendment to put forward roughly $100,000 to fund the climate plan, which is again the equivalent amount that we had requested from the state. So,
what about for the green infrastructure project that we had proposed? Is that going to move forward, or?
I think they have to do the
are
plan.
you referring?
I thought we had applied for 2 things in the action grant.
No, so we
One was
applied
green
for
infrastructure and one's the climate plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we applied for an action grant. Separately, I applied alongside Charles River Watershed Association and the school district for a grant from MAPC
Oh, okay.
for climate literacy in the Watertown Public Schools that would tie into existing and planned future green infrastructure, on school grounds and nearby. And we haven't heard about that one yet.
No, this was definitely tied to MA and the MVP program. This was
within our action plan, within our climate plan request, we had 2 what we called early action items. One of them was resources for landlords and renters about how to prepare for climate change threats, and the other was some study and identification and initial design for green infrastructure projects in high priority areas.
Got it.
Yeah, but again, that application was not funded. So
Right. So what the town's funding, that's just for the plan, right? That's not for the early action stuff.
But they asked,
yeah, that's correct, because the short answer is yes.
but the town is looking at implementing, if you're looking for charging stations for electric vehicles and things like that, they are looking at doing those separately and via another avenue. I think they're putting in charging stations behind town hall, two behind town hall or in the library area, and then somewhere else. I forget where else they were putting it, but that's for electric vehicles when you drive one. So,
yeah.
But they're pursuing other things with regard to like all the schools. The 2 new schools that are being constructed are zero net balance. And the high school, there was another meeting tonight on the new design for the new high school, and the goal is for that to be zero net balance. So the town is trying to make an effort on on green infrastructure. So I don't know if that helps you.
Yeah, we're certainly doing things alongside the work that we'll be doing in creating an actual climate plan. So.
Okay, the next item.
Okay. The pollinator garden at the DPW site. I finally got Bob Dorico's efforts on this. Unfortunately, he went to some local nurseries, and they really didn't have the types of plants that we had wanted him to plant. So he said that we need to wait until the spring. So that's a little disappointing, but I will be bothering him as soon as the frost ends to get out there to the nurseries to pick up the right plants.
Yeah. Laura, do you think that we could make some headway in getting like doing that inventory of where the available gardens are? Because it almost might be better in that perhaps we could reach back out to like that Meadowscaper program, and they had mentioned some like local community grants they can apply to through one of the banks or something. So maybe that we could have like a broader array of available parcels, and if there is an opportunity to intersect with that group, then like I think just having like a whole list of available patches in the town could be helpful.
So it is amazing. I was driving over, I was going over Fresh Pond, I forget where it was. And there were a whole bunch of townspeople in the island, right? Concord Ave, in the middle of Concord Ave, almost the Fresh Pond Golf Course. And there's an island there that has plantings in it. And it had a little sign up, and they had little cones out. And it was all, the neighborhoods were doing the neighborhood garden, which is something that Watertown doesn't want us to do. But I was thinking, wow, that's what the pollinator people would like to do, is plant the thing and maintain it themselves. But he didn't. They don't seem to want us to do that. But it was funny. They do it in Belmont. So.
Yeah. No, I've certainly made a little bit of headway in looking at like our GIS files, and just from my own knowledge of like where the pollinator gardens do exist already in town, and sort of creating like a comprehensive view of where we have them and where we could put them. So.
Be great to have.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so Leo, feel free to chime in, but Leo happened to be at Max's property. Was it the Williams Pond parcel, correct?
It was the parcel between Elm Street
as opposed
and Arlington Street.
And Arlington, yeah.
Which what some people call it Williams Pond, but there's no pond. It's Williams. It's called the Williams parcel.
Yeah. So I sent him a letter that I think I included in the packet to you guys, but basically earlier this spring, he had requested to do some brush clearing and like downed tree cutting and things like that. And I posited that he could only use hand tools and could only do it in a very restricted zone. And then I went out and looked on my own later in the spring. And then Leo happened to be there a couple of weeks ago and noticed that there was a lot more sort of downed cut brush and debris that was sort of all over the site. So Leo gave him a little bit of a warning, and then I sent him that letter. Just so you know.
Thank you.
That was an FYI. That was all. I mean, I actually, I won't go into it. I actually was going down there as a request for something else, but I mean, I was amazed. I looked over the fence and I saw all this brush. This is on the site on Elm Street, and I just saw brush stacked everywhere. So what is all that stuff? It's like, whoa. So I did meet
Yeah.
with him, and I told him, I said, that's not what we agreed to. You agreed to opening up the area so you could have your little garden, which is right across the street, right next to Arlington Street. You had a little garden there at one time. And so that's not your garden, Max. You overstretched again. So we just wanted to confirm it with a letter, which we did.
Yeah.
A little slap on the wrist.
Yeah. And then finally, for ongoing orders of conditions, Arsenal Park, I think we've all heard enough about Arsenal Park tonight.
I just want to reiterate one thing, and that is
Yeah.
the noise levels from the air handling units in the building adjacent to the tennis courts is very loud, and
I know.
I think we noticed that when we did a site walk last May. I've written a number of letters to Steve regarding the noise levels not being repaired yet. It's been going on since May, and now we're in November. It still hasn't been repaired yet. It was loud when we were down there last week to do that site walk. And so it seems to be taking a long time to get those noise levels repaired. So I just want to make sure it's in our notes that it's an issue, and it needs to be looked at by the town. It's a park. And if you look in Chapter 97, Article 97 in the state legislature, it talks about a park being free of noise and an open space for quiet and things like that. And that's far from being quiet. So if we have to invoke Chapter 97, which one of our only few parks in town is Article 97 park, we should do that to that landowner and tell them that those noise levels are not acceptable. So,
What is the source of the noise?
the air handling units. There's two of them up on the roof before building A. It's the old building, but it's very loud, and it's not acceptable. I mean, they got to do something better. And I know from my conversations with my messages back and forth with Steve and Gideon, and I even sent one directly to the developer, that they are working on it, but seems taking a long time. So if it's not better, maybe we think about a letter next month about how it's impacting our park. And we're only lucky it's COVID. Not many people are down there, and it's getting cold. So, but it's just not acceptable. So,
Yep.
Sorry.
I agree. No, it's okay. That's very valid point. I've noticed it every time that we've been there for site visits. So, Arsenal Yards, they're still sort of preparing their design plans for their final building that they still haven't broken ground on. Glenn mentioned this, but the sort of pedestrian connection, I think it's called the River Green, that sort of connects that property to Arsenal Park in the Phase A area. That sort of connection is under construction now. So that'll be nice to see the two sites sort of married together and see how that transition is going to work. For 330 Pleasant, they're submitting this week their as-built plans, including their as-built landscaping scheme, in order to get a temporary certificate of occupancy for the east building. They're not finished with the west building yet, but I think they want to start activating the eastern one. I went out a few weeks ago when the landscaping was maybe like 80% finished. But once we get the as-built plan, I'll go out again either this week or next week to confirm how everything's looking. And that is all I have.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then that brings us to the end of our agenda. So
Yeah.
I think we can thank you all for coming and say, I guess we need to do a motion to adjourn.
I just want to say a thank you to Laurel. I know that MAPC grant came through like in the summer during the pandemic time. So kudos to you for putting that through. Sorry that the MVP grant didn't work out, but it's also very positive that the town still funded. It sounds like pretty much almost all of what was going to be.
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I'm really glad too. And it's definitely been a crazy time, but you know, we're still managing to do our job. So
Yeah.
I think, Maria, I think that the advancement of that plan got a lot of support across wide areas of town. So it was like almost like well, not a no-brainer to fund it, but I think there was a lot of people pushed for that grant to be completed.
No, that's wonderful. But I even just heard submitting an application for the MAPC thing. I just know that those are extra things
Yeah.
that are on top of your job applying for
Mhm.
grants. And it's nice to see staff take the initiative to do that. So I just wanted to acknowledge the effort there. Thank you.
Here,
sure,
here.
I appreciate it.
Leo, do we have a date for next month?
That's the first Wednesday of December.
Okay.
My phone shut off. I didn't want it to ring in the middle of the meeting.
December 2nd,
Okay. Great.
is that correct? I think so.
That looks right to me. Yeah.
So hopefully by then we'll have a DPW subcommittee meeting and have our people interviewed so we can have another member join us. So that'd be nice. Oh.
Well, wasn't there already a member selected? We were just waiting.
For the
Yeah, that's what
DPW
he
subcommittee
means.
meeting, they have to have an interview with the DPW. There's three of us. I mean, Charlie, Patrick, and I are still waiting for our reappointment interviews with the DPW subcommittee. Then it goes back to the town council in full for approval. So that's been on hold since March. And so is
Oh, I was talking about the new person.
well, she's in the
Yeah,
same group. She has the same group.
Her final hurdle is the DPW subcommittee interview,
Yep.
I think.
Right, and then approval by the town council. So yeah, so it's until they start having those meetings again. And the battle is there's only so many Zoom meetings a night. I think they try to limit to two Zoom meetings a night, so it's kind of how do you fit them all in? So
We could invite her to join us. I mean, if they haven't done that step, she could sit.
I think Leo's making a bigger deal. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it like that. I know what you're talking about now, but like it feels like almost forever ago. But the town manager interviewed us, you and I, the same night. So the town manager's already made his appointment, reappointment of us.
correct.
It's just more that rubber stamp of that the DPW subcommittee also has to do it, Charlie.
And then it has to go to the town council for
Oh.
approval. So
Well,
it gets referred to subcommittee, and then from the subcommittee, after they rubber stamp everything, because the town manager usually screens people, and then it goes back to the town council for approval. So it's two more steps to go.
Ooh.
So
but Leo, what are they going to do? I mean,
you got to agree with it. It's just a matter of pushing them to do it, and so I've been trying to push them.
Are they going to kick us off? Are we overpaid? For God's sakes. I want a raise. Nothing of nothing is still nothing.
Okay. You're going to shut your mic off.
I'm shutting it now.
Okay. All right. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
A second.
I second.
Patrick, second. I'm going to roll call vote. Maria,
Aye.
Charlie,
Aye.
Patrick,
Aye.
Jamie,
I
Leo is yes. Good. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
We'll
That's
see you all.
great.
We'll see you in a month.